I am Jérémy.
And I'm Ben.
Together we are 15 degrees north.
Today we're going to show you the sights and sounds of Albania. Albania is a country on the western Balkan coast, which until recently had a somewhat enigmatic reputation as a country completely sealed off from the rest of the world.
A medieval kingdom that formed part of the Ottoman Empire, Albania has been independent since 1912, but following liberation from the Nazis, it became a communist country led by a totalitarian dictator who closed the borders entirely to the rest of the world until 1991.
This means that the country is somewhat behind its neighbours economically, but in recent years it has been undergoing a renaissance, opening up to tourists and welcoming cultural development.
The result is a country with lots of tourism infrastructure and rock bottom prices.
So you can see why people are flocking from all over Europe for a slice of Albanian vacation.
Tirana is a nation's capital containing this rather unusual pyramidal structure.
Yeah, what exactly is that?
Today it's an IT center, but it was actually built as a museum about the legacy of Enver Hoxha, our aforementioned dictator.
So they built the pyramid in his memory and then when communism fell just repurposed it.
Exactly. It was opened in 1988 and then communism fell in 1991, so it was only functional for 3 years.
There are very few historical buildings in Tirana, but to understand the nation's tumultuous history, you have to come here.
Hoxha, and I hope I pronounced this right, ruled Albania from 1944 until 1985. The early years of his rule were greatly positive, rebuilding the country after World War II and significantly improving the health and education of its citizens.
But Hoxha was an increasingly paranoid man, convinced that sooner or later, neighbouring Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union, or even Western European powers would eventually invade his country.
He closed the border entirely, completely controlled the media, and implemented extensive surveillance of the general public.
So much so that by the end of his rule, 1 in every 3 Albanians had either been interrogated by the secret police or sent to a labour camp.
Western culture was banned. Religion was outlawed, and if someone was convicted of political crimes, their entire family would be condemned along with them.
That's some crazy Orwellian levels of paranoia right there.
Oh yes, Hoxha was at Kim Jong-un levels of authoritarian craziness.
Today, Albania's tourist industry is centred around the Adriatic Coast.
Is there anything better than spending a day lounging in the sun at the beach?
Well, as a ginger, I'll leave that to you, my dear.
So we spread out our beach days by visiting more cultural sites in between.
Or did we delay our cultural visits by wasting days at the beach?
And that, dearest Benjamin, is what's known as a compromise.
Much of Albania's history has long been bulldozed, but there are traces of it around, and this is an ancient civilization known as Illyria back in Roman times. And today there are traces here and there, castles, ruins, etc., and a couple of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, of which this is one of them, Gjirokastër. Gjirokaster is an ancient city in a valley in the Gjiri Mountains.
Overlooked by an enormous fortress, a town has sat on this spot since the Middle Ages.
Initially a part of the Byzantine Empire, it sat at the frontier between various empires, passing back and forth between them many times.
Today, it's the Ottoman influence that you can see clearest of all, with many of its historic houses dating from the 17th and 18th centuries.
Unlike most of Albania, Gjirokastër survived the modernisation building programmes of the 1960s and 70s. I wonder why the town was spared the bulldozer.
Well, that might be something to do with the fact that Enver Hoxha actually came from here, so his nostalgic childhood connection to the town is probably the reason why it is still standing in all its glory to this very day.
Away from the centre, and there are vast homes covering 5 stories dotted across the hillside.
Many of these have been preserved and you can visit several of them today.
All the generations of the same family would live within these walls, so each one is like a mini castle, with the functional rooms toward the bottom and recreational rooms toward the top.
On the top floor they had a terrace where the patriarch would sit in his armchair and watch his lands below, making sure that his workers were always doing what they were supposed to be doing.
And then there was the wedding room, a room for weddings, which is why they called it the wedding room.
Clever.
And these were very fancy indeed.
Understatement.
And then there's the fortress itself.
And you really don't get an idea of the scale of this place until you start wandering through its vast hallways, which just go on, crisscrossing the hilltop in a rabid warren of passages and chambers.
This is one hell of a big fortress. It's absolutely enormous. You don't really get a feeling of the scale of the place until you're up here. It's been here for 1500 years, in various different guises, and was used as a communist prison during the regime up until the fall of communism in the early 90s.
Cultural day done. Time for the beach.
Yay.
Oh come on, they're the reason why people are calling Albania the Maldives of Europe.
Okay, fine. The beaches are all right here.
Okay, they're better than all right. Berat is our final stop in Albania, heading inland toward the border with North Macedonia.
Thankfully, Berat has also been spared the bulldozer, and nowadays, just like Gjirokastër, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
We loved exploring this cute little old town and climbing the hill to see its huge fortress.
Yes, we climbed that hill in 40-degree heat, all the way to the top in 40-degree heat.
It was definitely worth it.
In 40-degree heat.
But the real surprise of our trip to Albania actually ended up being our favourite in the country.
Up in the mountains, we visited a gorgeous vineyard that offers a wine tasting like no other.
You taste their wines and eat some lovely food, but it's not just the wine that they make here. Oh no.
They also make raki.
The national spirit of Albania. It can be made from many different fruits, but there it is made from grapes.
Offered to guests as standard Albanian hospitality, it is drunk in abundance by everyone, from teenagers right the way through to great-grandfathers.
Oh, they absolutely love it there.
And so did we. Well, we've had a lot of fun at the vineyard, haven't we?
We did, yes, it's been great.
Probably the best tasting we've ever had. Probably because of the fact they gave us shots at the end of it, which was, yeah, and we've drunk a fair amount now. But the wine's really, really nice, and we are drinking this lovely wine underneath all this grapes.